Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is drowning at the box office. It performed even worse than the Brie Larson led The Marvels. Before we get into this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. With that out of the way, let's get into this here. Wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com. It is indeed drowning at the box office. It has performed worse than The Marvels. It had an even just a marginally better opening 3-day weekend than Blue Beetle. So showing you just how terribly this film is doing. According to the numbers, the film had an opening domestic weekend of just 27.7 million. However, it did have a relatively strong Christmas Day performance of 12.3 million, boosting its 4-day weekend Christmas grosses to 40 million. While the film posted a relatively strong Christmas Day number, the film saw its grosses significantly declining from Friday to Saturday and then Saturday to Sunday. It only brought in 13.7 million on Friday. It declined to 9 million on Saturday and then plummeted to 5 million on Sunday. That's a decline of 33% between Friday and Saturday and a whopping 44% between Saturday and Sunday. I think a big indicator that this film will not have any kind of legs. And just to kind of highlight that, we can see some of these user scores here. Cinema Score giving it a B. That is pretty much a death knell for a superhero film. Over at Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 79%. That's, I guess, okay. But then you look over here at IMDb, 6 out of 10. A lot of middling scores here in the 6 and 5. So it doesn't look like the film is that good. But let's get back to these numbers. And I do think that is an indication that this film will not have very strong legs, at least domestically. At the international box office, the film has grossed 80.1 million. And then so far, the film has brought in 120.1 million globally. So that is kind of its 4-day opening weekend. If you compare the film to recent DC releases, the film is performing marginally better than films like The Blue Beetle. That film's 3-day weekend had a 27.7 million domestic opening. So Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom did indeed beat it. However, the film Blue Beetle wouldn't top 40 million until its second Saturday. Blue Beetle would max out at the domestic box office at 72.4 million. Compared to The Flash, the film is still far behind. The Ezra Miller-led film grossed 55 million in its opening weekend and would go on to total 108.1 million domestic. The film had a far worse opening weekend than Shazam: Fury of the Gods. The Zachary Levi-led film had an opening weekend of 30.1 million. However, its domestic grosses capped out at 57.6 million. An even uglier picture emerges when you look at the film compared to the first Aquaman film. The first film had a 72.5 million opening weekend and powered home to a 335 million total domestic box office. It would add another 808.6 million internationally for a global gross of 1.1 billion. Then when you look at the Marvels, it looks even uglier for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. The Marvels grossed 46.1 million in its 3-day opening weekend, besting Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom's 4-day weekend by over $6 million. The Marvels also had lower percentage drops in its dailies during its opening weekend as well. So it only declined 29% from Friday to Saturday and just 39% from Saturday to Sunday. The Marvels would only gross 84.4 million as a domestic box office. It did gross 115.5 million internationally. And then globally, the film grossed just $200 million. Huge box office bomb, given the fact that it cost probably upwards of $300 million. We know it's already done 274 million, but we don't even have the final numbers on that. So Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is likely to lose a ton of money for Warner Brothers Pictures, given the film's estimated production budget is $205 million. That means the film needs to gross around $512.5 million on the conservative end due to the cut that theaters take at the box office, as well as the studio's marketing costs. In fact, our good friend of the channel, OMB Reviews, he did a kind of overview of the film as well, and the box office as well. And he thinks that the film will indeed flop and believes it will only gross between 200 million and 300 million in its entire box office run. I do think if you do look at some of the actual data here, you will see, comparing here, looking at the Marvels, the film does look like it might have some strong international legs. I know it's been kind of somewhat doing well over in China, so you might see those global numbers boost up a little bit. But it is going to be a race between which of these two films performs worse, between the Marvels and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. I'm probably going to go with the Marvels. I think the international number will probably help Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, because you can already kind of see that international for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is 80.1 million, whereas the Marvels only did 115 million total. So it's already kind of on its way to besting that number. So I think that's where you might see Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom defeat the Marvels. And then if you just kind of want to look at some of these other recent DC films here, you can see that it is not looking good for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Obviously, nowhere near the 2018 Aquaman film, absolutely slaughtering it. But you can see here, opening weekend worse than Shazam: Fury of the Gods, and just barely beating Blue Beetle. Obviously, Christmas Day does kind of boost it up to 40 million. So it's still performing worse than the Flash, though. Even the Flash's 3-day weekend that it had. So it is not looking good. This looks like to be kind of a DCEU going out with a whimper. It is being drowned, and the entire that entire universe is just, they're hoping to do away with it. Even James Gunn has commented on, he's hoping that a year of basically no DC content will be good for them. So they probably want this film to get out there, die quietly, and people will move on and hopefully forget any of this stuff actually happened, and they'll be ready to go for Superman Legacy. But we'll see if that actually works. I'm not sure it will. But it looks like Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom will be another financial disaster for Warner Brothers Pictures. Let me know what you guys make of how Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom did in its opening weekend. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Remember to always be charitable, but to always speak the truth.